May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our Creator, our Redeemer, and the one who sustains us. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. Well, as many of you know, I was the one who was on to preach this past Sunday on Palm and Passion Sunday. And leading up to this particular Sunday, I was really struggling with what to say, and I expressed my challenge in trying to come up with something to say to a few of my clergy friends. And one of them said to me, "Just let the liturgy speak for itself, because the liturgy is so rich." And I feel that's particularly the case tonight, that Maundy Thursday's liturgy is just so rich. There are ways that we put ourselves into this liturgy and reenact parts of the story that we don't often do at any other time of the year. And there's three main rituals that we do this night. One we just heard about in the gospel that I read, and that when I finish preaching, we will do here at the front of the church, and that's foot washing. And it is to remind us of Jesus' service to others and how we are called on to serve others as well. Tonight we celebrate the Eucharist, and this is something that we do on a regular basis on Sundays. But tonight we are remembering in a special way Jesus' Last Supper with his friends and the first Eucharist. And at the end of this service, we will strip the altar, we will take everything out of the chancel, and it will remind us of Jesus' time in the Garden of Gethsemane and his arrest. And I want to acknowledge in this moment how much harder those who are worshiping with us online have to work to put themselves physically into this liturgy. Because when those who are here in person come into this beautiful building, our wonderful Chancel Guild has prepared all the things that we need for tonight. The towels, the water, all the linens, everything is already here for us. So I want to acknowledge that those online do have to work a little bit harder to engage in this liturgy. But it is possible. So I'm going to address those who are online for just a moment about the ways in which they can put themselves into this liturgy as well. When we have the foot washing, you can have a bowl of water and a towel with you as a visible reminder and a tangible reminder of the water that we use for washing feet. If there's others who are with you, you can wash their feet and they can wash yours. You can participate in the liturgy that way. When we get to the beautiful prayer at the end of the Eucharistic prayer, where it's the prayer for spiritual communion, I encourage you to say the words out loud and to think about their meaning. They're absolutely beautiful. They remind us of how Jesus is with us in a very special way in that bread and that wine. And those who are here in the building can hear those words too. And at the end of this beautiful service, as things are stripped away from the altar, as things are taken out of the chancel, you can clear the space around your computer or whatever device you're using to connect in with us, to clear that space and to show that you're part of it as well. And whether you're here in the building or you're participating online, as these parts of the service happen, we can all reflect on what it means for us. We can reflect as feet are being washed on this example of service and love that Christ gave to us and asked us to show our love for one another in this way. Acts of service being in solidarity with those who are most vulnerable. That is the example that he gave to us that night. The Eucharist is, and when Jesus had his Last Supper, was a Passover meal. And we heard all of the details of that first Passover in the Old Testament reading that Allison read to us this evening. Jesus took that meal and he redefined its meaning for his followers. And he redefined family as well. The Passover meal, the sacrifice of the lambs was done in community. They would all gather at the temple and they would sacrifice the lambs, but the meal itself was a family meal. And Jesus gathered around him not only his blood relatives as family, but those he chose to be family, and the faith community that was family. And so we can reflect on that family meal and the family of faith that we are part of tonight and going forward. And at the end of the ceremony, as things are stripped away from the altar, we will reflect on how Jesus' everything that was connected with his earthly life was being stripped away from him. In that night in the Garden of Gethsemane, and in the trial, and everything that went forward. He was emptying himself of all of this to be filled up with grace. And we will find that we are going to reflect too, as we reflect on his sacrifice, we will reflect on times when things have been stripped away from us as well. But we can also reflect on the ways that we perhaps empty ourselves to be filled with grace and mercy and love. We put ourselves into these stories, not only to take ourselves into the past, to reenact something that happened in the past, but we put ourselves into these stories to bring those stories to the present and to help us to understand how we are to live our Christian life in the present and in the future. Amen.